Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hello, everybody. How are you
This
today?
is this is a new episode of DocsGPT Live, and on this episode we will discuss the open source modules, how to run them with DocsGPT, how to integrate them, what kind of issues some of them may have. We'll discuss fine tuning as well. Then we'll move on our discussion to streaming responses, how to make sure that we see streaming responses on our front end. And then we'll continue with history, and we will also show some cool code formatting that we've already implemented. And at the end, we'll do questions and answers and try and see your opinion, guys, and see what you want us maybe to add in future, maybe some questions you have. We'll wait a couple of minutes and then we'll start showing you the open source modules and how they work.
One second, guys. We're trying to turn the
On
chat
the
on.
chat. We're using a new tool for live streams. It's called Restream, because our previous tool that we've been using, that's called Video, they shut down. And this new tool, we need to figure out how to turn on the chat. Let's see. They have settings, privacy, public. They don't seem to have chat control there.
On YouTube, maybe?
I'm gonna try. If we can edit on YouTube. Let's see, Restream. Chat. Okay. Enable. So they have this chat overlay. Media settings. Graphics, interface.
I think it's because each was made for kids for some reason. And
Did I?
yeah,
Where is this choice made? Even.
I think you need to restart probably.
Yeah, I think I may need to restart the stream then. Oh, that's annoying. Privacy, public, unlisted, public.
Okay, I changed it. Comments now open. Can somebody tell?
Yeah.
I'm
Let
not
me
too
check.
sure.
Yes, they're open.
Okay, nice.
Finally. Good job, Pavel. How did you do that?
In the panel, in the YouTube panel, I found it by luck. Okay, so
Oh,
we
look, you
can
can even
start
see
now.
comments here. Perfect. Perfect. Oh, that was stressful. Sorry, everyone, for a delay with the comments. It was a bit annoying with the tool. I don't know why it doesn't support it from default, but we figured it out at least. So does anyone have any questions here? Maybe somebody wants to say hi. Remember, there was Niko on Discord. He was showing us new designs that he wants to use for the sources, because we can do that. We have the data, the everything, and he just really wanted to do it in a similar way as some other tool to display the data. I can show my screen for a few seconds just to show you how it looks like, what he wanted to add. So that's my screen. I hope it's big enough. Let's remove the chat overlay. And in here, basically, he found this cool app with cool UI. And it basically answers questions as well, but on some generic things. I don't really know what it's trained on, but I think some great thinker, and takes some time to answer. But the whole point is that it doesn't just answer on top of your data, it shows you references. And I really like the way it works, because it's very, very cool. So you click on one and it shows you the source as a drop down, and it shows you basically the original material as well as a link, or you can just see what kind of ingest data was used to answer the question. So I think that's a really, really cool feature. So thank you, Niko, for adding it. And when you click another number, it changes the passage. So in our code, we already have a retriever, and this retriever basically already gets all of the required source materials. So it's a matter of pushing data back to the front end and making sure that we use that data in the front end, because the back end already has it. It's just a matter of connecting the dots. And maybe the only other bit is, having those cool numbers as references, which is probably we can do something with a bit of prompt engineering. One thing that would be impossible. Oh, Niko, hi. Is from Mayo's chat with data. Mayo chat represents all sources collapsed. You can expand, but this implementation looks cooler. I agree. It's a really cool implementation. It's very sleek. So we want to keep that sleek design. I hope Nick is gonna check the stream out and see that people are excited about cool UI, and how it just can add a lot to the thing. Yeah, exactly. Prompt engineering is only for the number for the link, but in general, it should be quite straightforward. What do you think, Pavel?
Yeah, to be honest, it's always better to. I think the simpler the design, the better, and the more native it is.
Yeah.
Nobody
what did you
likes
think
to...
of the example Niko sent us?
Very cool, very cool. Good job.
Thank you, Niko. So next thing I can start on with showing you guys is how we can use open source models with DocsGPT, and how we just can integrate all of that data with us. Because there are some concerns with security, with sending the data out, not sending the data. Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna show it. So we have two Nikos, just one with a C, another with a K. I see you on our stream. Yes, I will show you exactly how the Hugging Face model will work and how GPT-4 all model will work. Basically, GPT-4 all is a open source project, and I think I'll just start streaming it, and I can show you how it looks, how it works, how it feels. So this is a project that uses models like Llama, like MPT one, the newer one, and they have a nice installer for macOS. So for example, I have their app installed. It has a nice, simple graphical interface, and it has download section. So here's all of the different models that they support. And previously, in our code, I've been using a different solution. I can show you the branch where I'm working on right now with my changes on feature streaming. So in this branch, at the top, we have a thing called Manifest. If anybody knows, Manifest is another open source project that helps you connect open source run models from Hugging Face to the app. But GPT for All is better in a sense that it connects you with all of those newer models since Llama came out, and it's much easier to connect now. So I will continue with the Hugging Face part that was asked in the question, but first I will show you that connecting a model really does consist of two parts. First we have to think about embeddings, and after that we have to think about text generation. So Pavel, if there's going to be any questions, please read them out. Yeah, I don't really have the access. So as you see here, you can already customize to use any large language model basically, and there are some instructions here. Some integrations are easier, some integrations are more complicated, and this branch, I will release it today after the stream, is nearly ready, and you will be able to choose your large language model name. You will be able to choose GPT for All, for example, and you will be able to choose your embeddings. This part is already integrated, so you can easily switch to Hugging Face embeddings now. And for the text generation model, you need to switch the LLM. So the only open source self-hosted one that was acceptable, that was working up till today, was the Manifest one. So those are the Hugging Face, GPT-J, and so on models. So if we go to this project, GitHub, they have a documentation section here, and somewhere they describe all of the different models that they have. So they have three main models, and it's GPT-J based, Llama based, and MPT based models. So previously you could connect by Manifest to GPT-J, but now you can connect to Llama and MPT as well. And to do this, all you have to do is to change your large language model name and your embeddings name if you want to use open source embeddings. So for open source embeddings, like asked in the question, we have to go find Hugging Face. So if you choose an environment variable in your .n file here, or here as well, that would work too. If you choose the Hugging Face sentence transformer OLMP net base v2, then DocsGPT will automatically only use those embeddings. And currently it uses ADA2 from OpenAI, which is not the most efficient option. It is expensive, and I think the biggest issue is it's expensive. But if you're running a small version of DocsGPT, it's much easier to use it without those embeddings because it takes extra RAM, extra CPU to run, but it's not that bad. So maybe we can switch to make, sure all embeddings are Hugging Face in future. That depends on feedback we receive. And other option you have here is Hugging Face Instructor Large. So those are a bit different, but they're still good embeddings. And you can connect to Kahir. That's another platform like OpenAI. They have their own embeddings too. So once you switch to embeddings that are Hugging Face sentence transformer ones, next step for you is going to be, update your repository with the newest version, where I will merge the GPT for all feature. And only thing you will probably need to do is to change the LLM name to GPT for all, and it will automatically load GPT for all model for you and set everything up. In terms of setting everything up, you will need to install separately GPT for all application, and they have nice instructions here. They have applications for Ubuntu, Mac OS, and Windows. So those are installers, and they install everything for you. So you really don't need to bother with anything. It's basically all done for you. And in terms of code, what I have done to make it work is I've added the LangChain GPT for all import. And all I had to do is quite simple, is just add LLM that points to my location of GPT for all. That's another part I think users may have to change. Probably I'll put it out in the as an environment variable somewhere here, so you can just point to the path where your model is located, and then just backend the name of the model from GPT for all, and it will load that model and it will use it to make responses. I have few issues with these open source models in general, and the reason for this being is they're not very well optimized for our use case. So, for example, they can write you a piece of code. They can do all of those things. They can list, some items. They can do some simple tasks that are, for example, adjectives. But the biggest issue is we have a purpose. We have documentation-based questions and answers. So our prompt is very different to all of those prompts those models were trained on. And this is why I think it's critical for us to release open source model, because once we do release our own open source model, it will be completely purpose optimized. And I think we're already testing alpha version, and we're still deciding on upon which of those open source models we should build it. There will be our base model, so we will choose one good base model and then fine tune it. So I think that's the way we're gonna go, and I think somewhere soon we will release it. We just have to make sure it's well trained, and we have plenty of feedback, and we do need to make sure we pick the right model to fine tune and optimize. If you live in Europe, you can also opt out to OpenAI's training data. You just fill up a form. Interesting. I didn't know that. I thought OpenAI, they already opt users out of training by default since I think January or February, because during January and February it was quite popular, and they started releasing GPT-4, and they used most of the ChatGPT chats to even build and create the GPT-4 model. If you live in Europe, you can for both your API requests and ChatGPT data. Interesting. Hope that helps. You don't have powerful workstation to run open source model. True, but this GPT for all model that I just showed you on the stream, it runs on my MacBook that has M1 processor, not M1 Pro, not M1 II, and it runs perfectly well. I can even maybe show it to you guys. So just launch it and, for example, say hi, or you see very quick responses, right? Python script to fetch data from fetch data. Let's just say this. it's basically GPT-4 speed on the API, and if you do have more tokens, it's going to become a bit slower. But in general, it runs quite well, as you see, and it's quite coherent and produces good code. But in our use case, in our prompts, it's going to be harder. It's going to get worse very quickly. I think we can agree GPT 3.5 is still superior. I think GPT 3.5 is really good, but all of those models that people are coming up with now are crazy good, are extremely good. Because I think they're even approaching to GPT-4 levels on some of the models. So the model I just ran is a 7 billion token one, and if you go to, for example, 60 billion token, it's just going to be much better. Article from TechCrunch was dated May 2nd. Interesting. Maybe I didn't know about that then. Prompts we already discussed about new way of summarization. So my way of summarization was going to be basically in every prompt, I really want to put more metadata on top. And unfortunately, LangChain's retrievers, they don't do this because I don't know, they're probably not really thinking that hard about our use case. But especially when you have a large data set, when you have, let's say, many files, it's very important to have a good metadata, and not just for search, and retrieval. It's also important to have this metadata for basically making sure the model understands where the context is and what the context where the context is coming from. Because if it doesn't, it will just get confused. If you want to have strict prompts and make sure that we don't respond with anything that's not relevant, it will also get confused. So that prompt will basically look like a normal prompt, but with each snippet of data that we provide, we add metadata on top of each snippet just to make sure that model is more aware of it, of the source. That's basically just the new strategy. But for this new strategy, I also think about how we can parallelize a lot of MapReduce processes. So I'm still thinking about putting it all in Celery or keeping it, just creating some background jobs via async. I still am not confident about which way we're gonna go with this. So next thing I wanted to show you is that we're working on a thing like this that basically streams your responses because there's obviously a large delay between the MapReduce part. Even if you have a complicated model like GPT-4, it takes 20-30 seconds to give you a response. And we really want to make sure users get streamed responses, just like in the screen on the top right corner. Because with streaming responses, you don't feel the ping, you don't feel the latency. Even if you don't have the full answer, you're already getting some response and it just doesn't feel as slow. I can show you a few bits of code for this streaming feature. So for this streaming feature, we have a separate endpoint, which is going to be called stream. The reason for this is because our okay, I have some stash changes that I need to restore. So the reason for stream endpoint is because we need to make sure we have separate API endpoints, because some models like Vertex AI, I don't know if you guys heard about Vertex AI. It's Google's model. It's basically Bard, but Bard in a API context. So like OpenAI has ChatGPT, which you can get an API access for. You can also work with it via the web application. Similar thing was done by Google, but the issue with their Vertex AI is they don't provide streaming responses. So Vertex AI. So this is their thing. They recently released on Google Cloud, and it's very, very, very cheap. Right now, I think they're even running it for free. So you can, guys, use it for free because they're like in a preview stage. And they have this generative AI studio where you can run this Vertex, where you can run their model. And if you go to pricing, it's also, once they do release it, it's going to be cheaper than ChatGPT even. But the issue with those models is that they don't really have streaming capability. I don't know, maybe I didn't figure out the API well, but they didn't stream for me. So I think it's important we have two endpoints in our code. one normal one, the classical API response, and another one that is going to be streaming. So yeah, it's called Chat Bison. And it's quite good. It's very good. And it's also extremely fast. So even if you're chatting with ChatGPT, you think it's fast, the Chat Bison is few times faster. It literally takes a second or two to generate the whole response, a complicated response, for example. And it is the tool they use behind Bard. So it's really, really, really good. But continuing to the streaming function. So I just simplified it here without all of the choices, selections, because I need to put it in a different function or maybe create a class or something for all of this stuff. And we basically have event stream. So we create the event stream in our response. We yield the data here, and that makes sure that in our front end, we can capture it quite easily. So if we go to source, conversation API, we do allow users to chat with the model. It should be seamless. So if a model doesn't support streaming, the front end should understand it and choose the correct way to handle the conversation. So it uses event source, and it basically creates a connection, and then it streams it in our conversation slice. And here we basically update our conversation with the last letter that's been added and just continue adding it to the front end. So this way we generate streaming responses. This feature is nearly completed. I need to ask a few people to help me to check the code because it's far from perfect yet. And I want to make sure it's very, very well done.
Let's move to history or something else.
Yeah. I think I can move on to history and we can discuss it. So we already implemented it. History is implemented. The responses that are streaming are not there yet. They will be there very, very soon. I think in the next few days. Basically, by the end of this week, it's going to be out. As for GPT-4All model, I think I'll just release the commits today to the branch. And history is ready. And we have also really cool code formatting that we included since the last live stream. So let me show you how history works. Let me find the commit in our repository, and I can show it to you guys. Okay, I found it. Here it is. There have been some really good pull requests from people last few weeks with linting. So all of Python linting is now governed by RAF, and it's all very well indented now. But sorry, back to the feature history. So to edit, we added the AI message prompt template so that we can basically, in our history, append AI message template and make sure that users get the, not users, so the ChatGPT knows who the message came from. So AI message prompt template is just one of the ways to make sure that this happens. And we store all of the data in our front end, and then upon each request, it all gets sent together with it. So we have full history in our response. In every single question that is asked, it sends full history. And then what it does, it checks what the maximum token is set. So if you guys think there's not enough history in your application and the one you deployed, just go in the code, go to line 180 of FPY and change tokens max history variable. Increase it if you want more history, decrease it or make it 0 if you want no history to be in your app, because that eats up your precious tokens in your context. So if you have a lot of context and a lot of data, it's a trade-off between history and between context that the model receives. And this is the advantage of GPT-4 model, is because it has 8,000 tokens. So it's okay to spare 500, but for models with 2,000 tokens, it's a harsh. It's hard. So here it just appends both prompt and response. But before it appends it, it checks if it can append it, if tokens are going to be over the limit or not. And here I just changed the template that it uses as well. I think the old one was not useful anymore. And remove the old history handling, because the old way we handled history was not working with chat modules, but now it's going to support chat modules very well and integrate with them very nicely. So since we're here already, I think I can show off the way our code highlighting works. I think it was few commits. Mostly on the front end, and we changed the prompt a little bit. So, for example, if you go here to application prompt, chat combined prompt, we make sure that whenever it uses code snippets, it uses this format, language and code like this. And it is important because this is the way front-end interprets code. So this is how it knows there's a code snippet. So we can ask it, Python snippet to make a to fetch data from API, let's say. So as the GPT-4 model is going to take a bit more to load, a bit more to process, but it's probably going to give us a bigger answer. Boom, here it is. So it supports not only Python, it also supports, let's say, JavaScript. So as you see, it indented it. It's similar style as Visual Studio Code. If you want to, experiment with different styles, for example, this whole parsing, I think it's somewhere in a conversation TypeScript file. and it uses this cool library that I found. It uses few cool libraries. Let me quickly find.
1 second, Niko. He'll show and then we'll answer the question. Or not answer, but check on it.
Okay, conversation bubble. And then here we have this React syntax highlighter. So we import Prism, we import React syntax highlighter, and this VS Code Dart plus. And then this is the syntax highlighter. And then there's extra steps to make sure. I remember Niko was helping us on making sure that list elements are opening correctly. And here it figures out which language is being used here. And yeah, that's how the highlighter works. So, and this is our JavaScript code with JavaScript highlighting. So Python, JavaScript, and Java, any other languages will work to anything that's supported by React syntax highlighter. Okay, let me check out Niko's question. Does chat history token also take users' initial input / question? So the history, right? It takes users, all of users' questions and answers, right? So it creates a list and it sends them all. So we store it in our Redux, and then it uses the whole list and it sends it in API. So it sends the full history. And then the model, it decides which parts it can append and which parts it cannot append. So if for example, users send 10 questions, 10 answers, it will only append, let's say, 5 of them or even 2 of them.
Does it append it history-wise or just as much as it fits?
What do you mean? Does it append
like
history-wise?
Does it append it the latest go first, for example? Or I mean, does it prioritize the latest? Does it go from the beginning or from the end of the conversation?
Very good point, Pavel. Let's check the main branch and check.
Because I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either. Okay, let's quickly switch branches, go to our history and check it out. So currently it just parses for I in history. I guess it's reverse. It doesn't check for the latest piece of information, but it gets the first piece of information in our history dictionary. And you know what? I think if we reverse the order, that will be correct, right? So if, for example, we start ingesting the latest questions and then go from the latest to the oldest, that would be better than going from the oldest to the latest.
Yeah, I think so. So it starts to forget a little as you move down, basically.
Absolutely.
It will be more logical.
Let me quickly commit this then. that's a good suggestion. So there's history order to use latest history first, and then I'll add Pavik as my co-author.
Add Niko as well.
I should have added Niko.
His question,
but Niko doesn't have GitHub, unfortunately. Yeah. We just added it. So, because maybe we can do some conversation memory. Maybe let's do only. Yes, but I still think it's better to limit it with tokens. Just imagine if you have one question where people, let's say, ask a question and it uses, let's say, 1,000 tokens to even respond, right? And you probably even pasted some piece of your code and you ask AI to change it or format it or edit something in that code, then I think it will be much better to take this question and maybe not use it at all because it's too big, right? So I think in future, maybe you can use like this summarizer, a tool that will basically summarize previous conversation to reduce the size and then use more things in your conversation. But yeah, or maybe the same map reduce. Oh, so they have conversation summary memory then. Nice. Before it is passed to use the history parameter. So I think then conversation summary memory will pretty much work as normal map reduce on documents, I think, down there. And since we are trying to move away from long chains, retrievers, and so on, I think we'll resolve to our own solution for conversation summary. But also with conversation summary, just adds more token usage, adds more things to the app, you know. And I would love to be able to probably manage the amount of conversational memory token. So maybe they do that as well. They already have a function, but higher long chain version, I think. Interesting. Okay, let me show you some cool code formatting styles that are available. Since I know Niko knows front end too, he'll be able to appreciate it. So this is the React syntax highlighter library that we use. And here's a bunch of different styles you can choose from. So I think we use VS Code 2015 one. And there's a bunch of other cool styles you can choose from. And all you really need to do to choose your style that you want is just change import in the conversation bubble from VCS Dark Plus to any other style that you like. So
thank you for your answer. Always for a question.
Yeah, thank you for your questions, Niko. Very active, bringing the good energy, just like from the Discord chat. I really like your involvement in our community lately. Yeah, so cool different styles. I really like this library. I do like this style called Tokyo Dark. I have it on my VS Code. I think I've sent some screenshots a long time ago to Pavel with this style, but I don't think it's gonna fit DocsGPT that well in terms of how cool it looks.
Quite minimalistic.
Yeah, too many. You know, it's good to work on code using that theme. I always use dark themes, right? But sometimes I like dark themes that have a bit more contrast to it, right? And when I use a theme without much contrast, I actually opened it. So this is my VS Code. I always use this tool, PyCharm, and right now I'm using their normal theme. They also have this theme, I think, that you can switch somehow. Theme, yes, it is here, Tokyo Night. It looks pretty cool, I think. And it's really cool during the night, but during the day, I feel like it's too bland for my eyes or something. It just all looks way too similar for me, but this way you have a bit more contrast. Just like this one. But I just
too
think
much blue white,
then
and then you can't go to sleep.
Maybe that's what helps me from going to sleep during the night then.
True.
It's a life hack, guys.
So I think now we have shown everything we wanted. If you guys have any more questions, now would be the best time to ask. We'll have a short Q&A.
We'll have some questions on our, we'll do some Q&A now. We have some questions coming in from Discord. Can DocsGPT read images, let's say from PDF. No, unfortunately, it can't yet. I think it will be quite expensive to process.
I think somebody had it in their library, which we support, but I'm not too sure.
So reading the images was supported in some library, like maybe GPT index or?
Yeah, I think in GPT index for PDF and something else, they use PyTorch to like vectorize it, and then they can process it, but I didn't test myself how good it does.
Interesting.
If you index with GPT index, then I think you might be able to connect it.
What's interesting there is if it gives people a normal, description, like it takes an image and says what's on the image, what's going on there, or is it somehow using it in vectors?
It uses it in vectors for GPT index at least. It vectorizes it for PDF and something else. I think they have like just native like PNG, JPEG format, but I'm not sure how it can be used in chat, for example. So, well, I know how it can be used, but how to implement it, not too sure.
Yeah. So in general, GPT-4 supports it, but DocsGPT doesn't support it yet. I mean, I think the thing for it would be about the limits for tokens. So it is already expensive to ingest a large data set. So for example, if you're ingesting, few million, 10 million tokens, you're quickly going to run into some high prices with OpenAI. So even if you ingest locally, it's a lot of CPU time as well. I don't think the other two prices are too large, but if you think about it, I think they're a bit large in comparison to hosting a little server for $5 and just ingesting on it, to be honest. But still, I think it is expensive. So for example, if you have 10 million tokens, that's $4. If you have 100 million tokens, that's $40. And imagine that you have to ingest your data frequently. Imagine you have certain things changing. That means your embeddings are going to be used up a lot. And especially when you start adding images, it's not going to use your traditional embeddings. It's not going to use your ADA v2 embeddings, but it's going to start using your GPT-4 tokens probably. And if you want to run a PyTorch model, that's also going to be expensive, because I guess that model will have to use GPU for inference. And if you start using GPU, it's going to be even more expensive. So I think the right question here is, how important is image data for you to justify the price, right? So imagine every single image you ingest costs around 10 cents, let's say. Let's go lower. Let's say 1 cent. And you have a document with 100 or more images, or you have 1,000 documents with 1,000 images, then it quickly becomes a big price. And yeah, maybe it should be an option for some users who have a small document and want to analyze a chart or something like this. But yeah.
I didn't even test how well GPT-4 handles images, to be honest, for now. But if any of you guys have experience with that, you can share.
Also been getting, just to answer some general questions I've been asked sometimes, is what types of ingestions are there? What types of retrieval mechanisms are there? So we use a MapReduce mechanism. So basically we take a piece of document from our vector store that matches the question most similarly to it. and we take, let's say, 5 or 10 of those documents, and at the same time, in parallel, we try to summarize it and to get the relevant parts out of it. And then for the end, we just use all of those short summaries and mix them up together in a big prompt where model will answer a question based on all little summaries. And there is another thing called stuff ingestion. So stuff is much faster because you don't have to wait for a model to respond on the shorter pieces. So you get a pretty much immediate response. Yeah. It does sound useful. I can imagine some people ingesting things like annual reports and wanting to understand some charts on it, or things like this. Or maybe some pictures that describe some processes might be useful too. Can you give me an example of the data that you want to ingest where images would be important? Maybe you have some interesting examples I haven't thought about. Niko is also curious. Handwritten forms. So I heard from few people asking questions about OCR, so like object recognition in object recognition basically inside the object recognition inside the PDF documents. Yeah, I think that will help you a lot, Boxman. You just use something like Taxaract or Google Cloud, actually. Just a good suggestion on it. Has really good OCR system. I remember for a long time I've been using it because their AI just picks up on everything in your PDF. I don't think I found a better AI to pick up on text data on PDF or OCR. But I think OCR is currently a little bit out of scope of DocsGPT, but I think sooner or later maybe that is something that will be an extra. But yeah, hopefully we grow there and add it one day. But I think for that it's much better to use an OCR. Yeah. Also had a question in Discord asking, can I use LLM name answering on stream? I don't know, maybe chat is not working for some people who have joined. That's why they write some of the questions in the Discord. But Lucas asked, can I use LLM name equals manifest, but do not provide embeddings name? So if, for example, you use manifest, right, instead of GPT for all, you have to also host manifest, just research it. And you don't really need to provide embeddings name, because if you don't, it will automatically use the OpenAI embeddings. So if you want to use Hugging Face embeddings, make sure it's explicit in your code. Just add it as an environment variable, the Hugging Face one. I think somewhere earlier in the stream I was showing how to actually set it up and make it work with Hugging Face and with GPT for all. I will release GPT for all this evening, so you guys will be able to test it soon. The chat in YouTube shows disabled for some reason. Very sorry for this, guys. This is the new tool we're using, and I think for some people it's working, for some it doesn't. Maybe reloading a page will help you. But there's this weird thing where basically you start a stream, sometimes it thinks it's made for children, and if it thinks it's made for children, then it doesn't really show any questions. I love that you're active on Discord, guys. Thank you for messaging here too. Does Docker container work for local hosting as well? Are you able to show off Docker? So for Docker, you have to, for Docker, you basically, just think of a container as an API endpoint. And if you host locally, you still need to spin up that model somewhere. So you can possibly spin it up in a container, and you can possibly spin it up in just locally on your device. And then your containers, they will need to connect to your local version of it. So your containers will need to connect to the local host. Okay, Niko, try to answer your question. My last question before I head to bed. I still have some work tomorrow, but have you guys considered integrating agents, such an agent to perform Google search, or an agent that looks up to agent toolkits that we can initiate, like a database schema or JSON file? For example, when asking about AWS, you may refer to XXX, or when asking question about X, you may refer to Y. So I will tell you, I will answer this question in two parts, because it is a good question. I really like the idea of agents, and I've been thinking in my head how to integrate them. I think the best way we currently can integrate an agent is probably as a way to scrape data. So a little machine that basically goes out to the webs and downloads the whole documentation for you, and then ingest it in DocsGPT, right? And I think that would be a really cool idea, because we can use power of GPT to help us scrape data essentially. But for a use case like search, for example, I think maybe as an extra input that we can use. But in my opinion, if people want, and what I noticed a lot with DocsGPT is people really want explicit answers on their data. So, for example, on web, you may find different materials on the internet, right, that will help you answer a question about AWS. It will find plenty of materials, but if you really want an answer that's based in your documentation, that might confuse you, or confuse why is the model not giving explicit answers on the explicit question given. But in general, I think if you think about documentation and how this project started as a tool to help developers with their documents, then it would be a good addition maybe to include a search function in it, and help just ingest that little summary along with other summaries that are provided from MapReduce. And that's a good idea. And here it's even more important for us to move away from non-chain structure here, because if, for example, we want to minimize amount of API calls, let's say GPT-4 model, then we make sure we do this MapReduce summaries, and we use the agent to collect data from search. And then we have one big third step where we connect those data points from everywhere. Well, I do like the idea of search, Niko. I really do. I wish we'll have a bit more time to write more code and more cool features for DocsGPT. Yeah. Revolution says he loves Docker. I absolutely love Docker too. But I've been seeing some people having troubles with setting up Docker on Windows machines and running it on Windows. And yeah, I really wish them good luck. They use it through WSL, so like Linux subsystem. And for some people it works, for some people it doesn't. Yeah, search agent basically. Yeah, Niko, like you said, basically, I think search agent will be a good idea. I don't know if you have any other ideas about other agents, please send them, because I think there are a lot of cool ideas, and maybe my head is a bit too deep into the coding and writing it that I don't really think more broadly about it. So yeah, we can use some of that open source code to integrate with DocsGPT and just make sure that, you know, Modal collects extra data from publicly available sources too. Maybe like an option or something. What do you think, Pavel, about agents in general?
I saw that LangChain has some. If you're talking about
yeah, LangChain, like they have a bunch
ones.
of them. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not too sure. I understand that they can be helpful by for retaining new information, what you thought basically, and like enriching the information provided for that purpose. But I'm not too sure. For example, I saw they had SQL one, something like that. Maybe I don't understand how that is more helpful than the pure model. But yeah, for retrieving new information or enriching, basically, the info we already have, I think it will be very useful.
I also continue on the topic of agents. I think you know, it's like a framework basically to allow. Okay, please do send the link in Discord. Thank you. So I think it's like a way for models basically to interact with other tools in general, and just anything that allows them to interact with the world outside. I think you can call it an agent. I mean, you can even say that what we have is also an agent that allows a model to interact with a vector store, right? But I really like this idea of AutoGPT, or like a baby AGI, that is basically like just AI running in circles and just doing all the work. And I think it's so cool. And maybe DocsGPT, you know, like just brainstorming on it, you know, have like a little tool that basically runs around your code and implements tests in it and tests the code and runs around your code, for example, and you know, creates documentation. We have a thing that generates documentation, but maybe, you know, could be a bit more formalized and integrated with GitHub or something like this.
True. So maybe last questions. If we don't have any, we can end it.
Yeah, let's see if there's
maybe in the Discord.
Okay, there's one question. Niko sent the article to Paper Q&A agent. Interesting. I think what they will use this agent is to gather data from the archive. You know, the place where they store all of the research places. I think that's probably what it is doing, in my opinion. Okay, guys, we'll just wait until one more minute, and then I think we will go. It was our third live stream. Really enjoy live streams. It helps us to understand you guys more and interact with you more, and just talk with the community that's ours. And we skipped a few weeks. It took nearly a month until this live stream, because we wanted to have some features to show off to you guys, and we finally have some new cool features. We've been very, very busy working on the open source model, and it's taking a long time to make sure it works perfectly. And also it is expensive to keep iterating on it and things like this. But we do have a lot of data to, fine tune it. And there's been so many new base models coming out. So it's really cool. But also another bit is there's no standard way of evaluating quality of GPT model responses. And what I mean here is there's all of those benchmarks, but they really don't apply to us because we have a specific purpose. So the best way for us to understand is to have mock questions and mock answers and just compare the quality and depth of those. And that's pretty much how we can, try and make sure models are best quality, to be honest. All right. Thank you, Niko. Thank you. Have a great day too. Have a great sleep.
And everybody who've been on the live stream, thank you. Thank you for your comments. If anybody thinks about some interesting topic for us to discuss, or you want to hear our opinion, like live, not just in the Discord, you can answer it, maybe like tag it as for live stream, and we can collect them and maybe have a few topics to discuss, not just showing features and stuff like that. Maybe just think about LLMs, anything else you wish to discuss, guys.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.